Across every poll online, you will see that the general consensus is that hard mode Terraria is better than pre-hard mode. But is this actually true, or is pre-hard mode Terraria actually better than hard mode, or at the very least overlooked? Let's talk about it. Before getting into any arguments in favor of pre-hard mode, I think we should start by talking about why most people love hard mode more in the first place. It objectively has more content. It doesn't take away any content from pre-hard mode, but it does add a bunch of new stuff. Multiple new ores, a ton of new bosses, hundreds of unique weapons, and so much more. It really does feel like an entirely new game when you enter hard mode for the first time, and if you're somebody who really wants as much content as possible, it's impossible to not love hard mode. The boss fights are another huge reason people prefer hard mode. While pre-hard mode does have some decent boss fights, hard mode has the most complicated and beloved bosses in the entire game. Duke Fishron, Empress of Light, and Plantera in particular are considered the best boss fights in the game, and those are all late game. Because the player has more weapons and accessories later in the game, it just makes sense that the bosses also have more opportunities to be unique and dynamic. They can have more hard-hitting and interesting attacks because the player has more means of dodging them. Speaking of gear, it's no secret that some of the most fun weapons and accessories are only available after hard mode. Wings, for example, are incredible, not just for combat but also for building and exploring. They're just a really satisfying item, and there are no wings available until you enter hard mode. I mean, I guess there are fledgling wings, but they don't really do anything. Something I love about hard mode in general is that you can really feel yourself becoming more powerful in real time because the pacing is much faster and the items become increasingly more interesting. Hard mode clearly has a lot of benefits, and I think it makes sense that most of the Terraria community likes it more than pre-hard mode. With that being said, I think that people overlook pre-hard mode far too much, and it has plenty of benefits, so let's talk about that. First of all, pre-hard mode promotes far more exploration. Most of the gear you obtain in the early game comes from discovering chests across the world rather than grinding for materials and going through advanced crafting trees. My favorite part about every Terraria playthrough is just when I'm exploring the underground, finding gear through chests. Discovering your first pair of Hermes boots, a blizzard in a bottle, your first suspicious looking eye, it's all so satisfying. Pre-hard mode Terraria directly incentivizes exploration, which can make it far more appealing to people like me who love Terraria for the exploration in the first place. Another upside is that pre-hard mode Terraria is a lot less grindy. Aside from getting some early game ore and obtaining a guide voodoo doll, there's basically no required grinding in pre-hard mode. In hard mode, on the other hand, there's plenty of mandatory grinding you need to make progress. Mining the first 3 ores, crafting the 3 mechanical boss summons, mining for chlorophyte, fighting the celestial pillars. The grinding in hard mode really isn't as bad as a lot of people say, but it's undoubtedly more tedious than pre-hard mode in a lot of ways. Another thing that can make pre-hard mode more appealing is that biome spread isn't an issue at all. The world evil only spreads across the surface biome at a very slow rate, and it is extremely easy to stop until you reach hard mode. The second you go into hard mode, biome spread can become a huge problem. If it takes over your base or any other important part of your world, it's extremely frustrating to deal with. It forces you to either rush the mechanical bosses to obtain the Clintaminator, which in itself is very expensive already, or just let your world get taken over by the world evil or Hallow. I've said this countless times, but biome spread is one of the worst mechanics in Terraria, or at the very least one of the most frustrating, and while it can be a slight inconvenience in pre-hard mode, it isn't nearly as bad. The last argument in favor of pre-hard mode, in my opinion, is that the player freedom and flexibility when it comes to fighting bosses is much better. I don't hear a lot of people talking about this, but you can tackle literally every boss fight in pre-hard mode in any order you want. If you wanted to, you could go and fight the Wall of Flesh and enter hard mode before even fighting the Eye of Cthulhu. You could fight Skeletron before fighting the Eater of Worlds. You could fight Queen Bee before fighting King Slime. You get the point. While there is a very clear intended order for fighting bosses in pre-hard mode, nothing is forced upon you, which can be great for experimentation. Hard mode doesn't have nearly as much freedom when it comes to boss fights. You need to fight the mech bosses before Plantera, you need to fight Plantera before Golem, and so on and so forth. There are plenty of optional bosses in hard mode on the side, yes, but the core progression is still a lot less flexible. Ultimately, I prefer pre-hard mode, but I think it comes down to what you prioritize. Since the community loves to prioritize boss fights and talk about that, it makes sense to me why you guys would prefer hard mode, since it's more boss focused. But I wouldn't say by any means that either stage of the game is truly better than the other. What do you think about pre-hard mode and hard mode? Make sure to leave your thoughts in the comments, and as always, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the video because we are very close to 3K. See you next time. Bye bye.